Hi, I'm Ben Wilson from Little Linen, and this month, November 2021, marks an important occasion in that it is Australia's first ever INPAA Baby Safety Month.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie from the Amazing Baby Company. Ben and I are both suppliers to this awesome industry and are passionate about baby safety, and we both love animals. Today we're here representing INPAA, and we are proud program partners and safety ambassadors for INPAA's first Baby Safety Month. As a part of week 2, Home Safety, we have the great pleasure of hosting an important Q&A session on pets.
We have some very special guests here with us today, and to help us work through this important topic, from Animal Welfare Victoria, we have their resident responsible pet ownership education program expert and canine behaviour consultant, Ernie Frapper, and one of the responsible pet ownership program managers, Rob Morris.
Okay, hi Gary.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. We know it's a busy time of year, so we're excited to kick it off.
Okay, and what do pets have to do with Baby Safety Month, I hear you ask? The answer is everything. Most new and expectant parents already have pets at home before bringing home a new baby, and the harsh reality is there are many dangers associated with this. Through this Q&A today, we hope to help highlight the importance of Animal Welfare Victoria's catch cry, "We are family," reinforcing that it's both all the humans and all the animals in a household that make up the family.
That's right, Ben. So nowadays, pets are such an important part of people's families, and many couples find themselves unsure of how to prepare their pet, mainly dogs and cats, for a new baby coming into the home. So today we want to have a little chat about what are the best ways that families can prepare for this, and what can they help to do to transition introducing the pets to a baby.
Well, the key point is early preparation. So that means prepare as early as you can. As soon as you know you're pregnant or you're trying, that's the time to start. And the fundamental underlying example of that is that you need to, if you fail to prepare to fail. It's really, really important that you put a lot into preparation, because your dog is a creature of habit. So it gets acclimated to the patterns that you have at home and everything that you do in your day-to-day life. And those patterns are predictable for the dog and make it comfortable. And when those patterns are broken, then you can start seeing some cracks and some challenges for your dog. So things that you should start looking at is, where does your dog sleep? Does it sleep in your bedroom? Does it sleep in other rooms? Is it going to sleep on your bed? Is it going to sleep in your bedroom or in other rooms when the baby comes? And if they're going to change, you need to change those pretty soon. And some of the things that you need to take into consideration is dogs can be startled when a door opens. So at night, if your dog sleeps in your room, you can open, a child can have a nightmare and open the door and then startle the dog, and the dog can start launch towards the child in a defensive mode because it's been startled. So think about where it's going to sleep. And if it's going to sleep in the room, have it as far away from the door as possible to get as much time as possible to recuperate from whoever comes in. Your dog may become more protective, so it's really, really important that you acknowledge that. And if it does that, then seek some help straight away. You need to teach your dog to spend time away from you. So make sure that it's not always clinging right beside you, because that's definitely going to cause some friction later on when you actually need time away to actually work with the baby and spend time with the baby. So make sure that you start in little increments to teach your dog to be away from you, and it's okay. Include the dog in the preparation and setup of the nursery and the prams, and getting your dog to habituate to the pram, just putting it in the lounge room and letting it walk around that. Start playing baby crying sounds off your phone. Just download a sound bite from that or a video and start playing it. And if your dog is a little bit freaked out by it, a little bit worried about it, a little bit cautious, then start playing it really, really loud, really, really low before it has its meal. So before dinner, you play it really, really low, and it starts to understand that when that sound comes, something good really happens. So it's important that you start getting it ready for those crying sounds as well, and then gradually you turn it up as the dog gets more comfortable. Once it's really comfortable, then use a different baby crying sound so that you can start teaching the dog to be ready for those sounds happening. You should practice carrying just a rolled up baby blanket in your arm maybe with some powder that the top's cracked so the dog can smell it. Just walking around, teaching your dog not to jump up at that. And sit down in some places that you might sit down when the baby comes. You might feed or just to rest. Sit down in those places as well. And then swap the cream, once the dog's comfortable with that, to swap the powder for cream. And then swap the cream for the phone playing the baby crying sounds. And that's just starting to get your dog prepared for you carrying things around. And when the baby comes, the dog says, I've seen this 1,000 times, no problems at all. I know what my job is. And when it comes to their job, it's important that you teach your dog to just, do some basic things, sit, drop, go to bed. And those things will help you. And one yes will resolve for 100 no's. And what that means is that if you teach your dog to go to your bed, if it's crowding you during you're changing the baby, you're feeding the baby, and it's crowding you and getting in your way, or it's at your feet when you're walking around, and you can send it to its bed, it's safe for you, the baby, and the dog. But that might happen over when you're feeding the baby, when you're changing the baby, just walking around, people come to the door, all of those things. Instead of telling it, no, don't be here, no, don't do that, no, don't do this, go to your bed and give it a job to do where you can actually reward the dog for that. That's really, really important. Also, have a look at the rough play protocols. If you have any rough play with your dog, start putting those on command or stop them altogether. And that means that you have the command, you have the play, and then you end the play. So it's very, very specific. Have some no-go zones for the dog and the baby. That's a really good thing to start getting the dog used to. So if the dog's going to come into the change room, for example, or the nursery, have a bed that it can go and stay on in there so it can be part of it, but it's actually not in your face while it's doing that. Some of the things that some more things that you need to look at is plan your trip for hospital. Make sure that if you go to hospital, that the food's looked after, the dog's still going to get walked, and when you're in hospital, send something of the baby's home for the dog to smell. And it doesn't need to be right up to the dog to lick or to take hold and walk away with. Just put it on a bench or up high. The dog will smell it straight away. And that's just starting to get the dog acclimated to the new smells that are going to be coming home. And then when it's time to actually bring the baby home, exercise the dog prior to coming home, and let mum enter the house without the baby. And that's because the dog might not have seen her for a couple of days and be really, really excited to see her. And when that happens, we want to make sure that the first interaction that the dog has with the baby is positive. And so we don't want mum carrying the baby in and saying, down, down, don't jump, because they haven't seen me for a couple of days. Have it as a positive experience. So mum comes in and somebody else can bring the baby in. And then swaddle the baby, have the dog on a lead, and let the dog sniff the baby's wrapped up feet. And then if it goes okay, then you can expose the feet and let that dog sniff the baby's feet. And for multiple households, it's important that you do this one dog at a time, and then you can do it later or the next day together. And it's super important to keep the dog engaged with you after baby comes home. So for 10 minutes, one-on-one time with mum is really, really important, where somebody else looks after Bubs and mum goes and spends 10 minutes just one-on-one, having some fun and entertaining with the dog. And there are a few things that can start you getting on your way to preparing your dog for the transition. But the key point there is make sure that it's early, as early as possible. It's fail to prepare to fail.
Wow, that's fantastic, Ernie. What a wealth of information there. Next question is going to be potentially a little easier than that one. And this is a quote off social media. And it's a gentleman who's written, "My dog's great already. He'll be fine. He would never bite, so I don't need to worry." What do you have to say about people like that?
So all dogs will bite given no alternative. And it's something that people definitely need to remember. Because dogs that are sore, dogs that are protecting their puppies, dogs that are startled, dogs that are given no choice but to fight their way out. That's their mechanism by which they take pressure off themselves. So it's really, really important that we understand and appreciate that given no other alternative, you can expect the dog to bite. So Um, my girl, she's a super girl. Her name's Candy. She's a wonderful dog. She's a therapy dog. She's an obedience and conformation champion. I love it a bit. But if I pushed her and pushed her and pushed her and pushed her, she would have no alternative to bite. So when we're saying that, it's not saying your dog's bad, your dog's terrible, your dog's not as good as it should be. What we're saying is just respect that your dog, given no other alternative, will bite. So it's important to note that. And when we talk about the percentages later on and the stats later on, you'll see that there's a lot of people that believe their dog wouldn't bite and they did. So when we're looking at dogs, we have to think about the three things that govern a dog's behavior at any one point. And they are genetics, the learnt history, so its experiences, and the current environment. And any behavior that a dog exhibits is a function of those three components. That's it. So in different percentages at different times. So it's important that we appreciate that they're the components that add to it. And we can change the learned history and we can change the current environment, but we definitely can't change the genetics. The genetics is the genetics, that's it. And we need to understand the limitations of the dogs because of that. And now, more than ever, dogs are involved in our life. Dog ownership is at its highest level. And dogs are more present in our lives inside our house and in every facet that we do when we go to the cafe. And that means that there's more opportunities and more possibilities for them to be stressed. And so it's something that we need to look at. And when we look at stress, we need to think about chronic exposure. So little bits of stress over an extended period add up to a lot of stress. And for dogs, when they're under stress, it takes between 4 to 7 days to release that cortisol, that stress chemical in their blood. So if they're stressed every day, they never actually go back to zero and become more and more stressed and more likely to actually have an incident. And one of the key points that we see now is that we see that there's a lot of people taking videos and for social media and pics of their dog and how wonderful their dog is. And that can be a disaster waiting to happen. And there's thousands and thousands of videos of dogs biting children, unfortunately, on the net. And for the majority of those, people believed that it was a good interaction. They were focusing on the child, not on the dog and not on the dog's body language. And you hear them laughing before the dog actually bites their child or their grandchild. That's a terrible, terrible thing. And Stanley Coren, PhD from University of British Columbia, in a massive research project, said that 81.6% of dog-human photos on the internet, the dog was displaying at least one sign of distress. And that's something we'll go through some of the signs later on, but that's so massive that it's 4 out of 5. And when we look at specifically children, 25% of all dog bites are to children under 4, and that's massive. Children under 4, quarter of all dog bites, and 75% of all dog attacks are the family or friends' dogs, and that's a really, really important stat too. And I think one of the most damning stats is that 43% of child dog bite victims were with their parents. And that means that they're there watching or meant to be supervising. And it's something that we definitely focus on in the program, and people should focus when they're looking at bringing a child home or a dog into the family, is supervise or separate. It's definitely something that they need to look at. 43%. So it's 4 out of 10 actually had their parents present when the dog bit. So it's something that needs to be taken into account. So those people that believe their dog doesn't bite, I'm sure there was a lot of those families that didn't believe they'd bite either.
Thanks, Ernie. I guess that leads on to our next question, which are there specific times that families should ensure that their child is not engaging with a dog?
Yeah, definitely. And when they should not engage in a dog when it's eating, when it's sleeping, when it's on its bed or in its kennel or under a bed in the house. They can definitely see that as an enclosed space that they might have to defend themselves to get out. If they're sick or injured, if they're tied up, so if they're tethered to something, definitely, or if it has puppies. And they are really, really key points where we should encourage and teach our children not to go up and bother dogs and harass dogs when they're doing those activities. And we should make sure that they understand that they need to be respected and treated nicely during those times as well. One of the other things is that we should probably just note is that 60% of children, when they were actually bitten, were either playing or patting a dog. And playing is a simple thing. We look at it and we say, oh, that's magnificent. Playing with a dog, it's great. 38% were bitten playing, and 22% were bitten while they were patting the dog. And when you look at that, we have to keep in mind that most animals learn how to fight through play. And they go through different fear periods and adolescent periods as they're growing up. And sometimes we perceive that it's play, but the dog's actually may be a little bit more intense. And if it feels a little bit afraid, can defend itself in the manner that we spoke of before.
There's actually something one of your colleagues said to us last time, which I found really interesting. And I'm sorry, this isn't on the run script, but she was saying about how people, if they own a dog and then they go to someone else's house with their child who owns a dog, they go, oh no, my child will be fine around dogs because they're always around dogs. And I found that really interesting because just like people, each dog has its own personality. And just because they're okay with your dog doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be okay with someone else's dog.
And that's a really good point. And what happens is that, especially where there's children that are of age, 4 and above, in a house, and a puppy comes in, and they then are treating the puppy, an 8-week-old puppy, fairly robust, fairly intense, and the puppy becomes acclimated to that engagement with people, and it grows up to have that level of engagement and acceptance of being handled that much. However, the children then become comfortable handling dogs that much. And then when they go and meet another dog on the street, or a friend's dog or a family member's dog, and then they treat it the same way, and that dog is not acclimated to being brought up that way. And that's not part of its life, and can definitely cause, dog bites then. And, a perfect example is my girl, lovely girl, super girl. But I had some visitors who had a dog, and their dog was pretty robust because it grew up with the kids, and Candy's robust too. But they actually crawled in to a crate, to Candy's crate, because the door was open. And that is a closed space, like the table, like the kennels, all those things that we're talking about. And I didn't believe that it was going to be an issue. But the thing is that just if you can see that it could cause something, just take them out. Close the crate so now the children can't go in there. It definitely is something that can happen, and you definitely see a lot of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ernie. Next, double barrel question. Why should I have a dog? And is there a better time to add a dog to our family?
Dogs are magnificent creatures. They're wonderful partners for people. And a lot of people, they will grieve their dog more than they will grieve most people when they pass. And they find them as wonderful companions through hard times. But just looking at research, we talk about children that grow up with dogs have greater self-esteem and empathy, and it actually prepares the immune system for the world, as well as enriching the home environment. So having a dog is a wonderful, wonderful start to life for children, and as part of teaching children all those things, that empathy component, and having a companion. It's a wonderful thing to have around, so definitely I encourage, all people to have dogs. And I've had them since I can remember, since I was 3 or 4. So it is something that adds to your life.
Definitely no argument from me there, Ernie. And is there a better time to add that dog to our family?
So I think that the optimum time is when your youngest child is 4 or over. Okay. And that just comes down to looking at that the speed at which a dog grows and the speed at which a puppy grows. And we have a lot of people contact me and say, oh, I'm due to have a baby in 2 months' time and I want a dog at the same time, so they grow up together. And it's a common theme that comes with people. And what happens is that the baby's born and the dog comes at the same time. Now, by the time the baby's 1 year old, it can walk maybe, right? and has not a lot of fine motor skills. But when we look at the dog is now an adult dog. Okay, and so the growth difference in that 12 months is massive. As opposed to having a child that's 4 and you look at it and you say, you can communicate to the child what's appropriate behavior, how to use the fine motor skills, what's good and what's not good. You can explain, hey, listen, this is when we need to give the dog space. And by the time the child is 5, it actually has better comprehension, better fine motor skills, and better interactions with the dog. And so if you get it when it's 4, the dog's 1 when the child's 5, you have great bond between those two. So that's definitely when I would suggest it. And if you're looking at times of year, I would suggest summer puppies. And a lot of people don't think of this, but summer puppies are always better. And what that means is that you want them born somewhere between July and August, so that they arrive in your house late September, early October, because that's when daylight savings happens. And you're more likely to take the dog out because when you get home from work, there's still daylight. So you're more likely to do stuff during that period of time. But we also have Halloween, which can freak some dogs out as adults. So you get them to go live through Halloween during that time. They will live through New Year's Eve and Christmas, where we have a lot of gatherings with people coming. New Year's Eve when we've got fireworks happening, thunderstorms in summer, and then we go into January and we've got Australia Day and those celebrations. But all of those things that you can expose your dog to in a positive way, and that make that dog grow up into a very well-rounded and robust adult dog that you can feel confident in. They're the things that you need to do during that time. And for me, I say that you should do 90 different things in 90 days with your dog. And that doesn't mean one thing. It means one thing every day. It doesn't mean do 7 things on Sunday. Just expose your dog carefully to these things over the period. So that's the best time to get a puppy.
Brilliant. Love it. Okay. So 4 years old and summertime. And the last one I'd never considered, but having just been through Halloween with dogs and also thunderstorms in the last week, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. Sorry, how old's your dog, Ben?
So we actually have 3. So we've got 6, 5, and 1.5.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and the last one's a rescue. So maybe afterwards we'll do some showing. So what behaviours will my dog exhibit to indicate that they're uncomfortable?
Okay, so and this is a really important thing, I think, because a lot of people look at the child and the child's interactions, and that the dog's taking it and the dog's allowing it to occur and it's not walking away and all those things. And a lot of that is because the dog wants to please you, and your dog will tolerate a lot because you've asked it to. And you might not have verbally asked it to, but just being there and your dog's looking at you while this child is harassing it, that's it actually saying, listen, help me. So can do some displacement behaviours, and they are like sniffing the ground and scratching. And so what that means is that when I'm looking at sniffing the ground or scratching, if you're in your own home, your dog knows what the piece of ground smells like right there. And if it has an interaction with a child and then that interaction stops and then it goes and sniffs the ground, that's an issue. The interaction that happened just before your dog didn't like. The same as if you have an interaction and that interaction stops and your dog sits down and has a big scratch of its neck. That's another displacement behavior. And when I talk about displacement behaviors, what I'm talking about is that it's trying to create an environment where it doesn't exist, right? So it sticks its head in the sand. That's what that displacement behavior is. When it's scratching, it's consuming its whole body. When it's sniffing, it's consuming its whole olfactory senses, all of its nose. So that's something that displacement behaviors, which dogs will exhibit, and then you can go, okay, next time I don't allow the interaction between the child or even the adult or the other dog to go that far. I need to wind it back a little bit, okay? And you govern from that. But there's stress and calming signals that you should also know. And we'll go through a couple, not a ton, but there's hundreds of them. But we look at lip licking. So a dog just licking the air is a stress signal. Okay, moving away. So it just moves away, just looking away. So just where it looks away, but it doesn't move its head. And they're the ones quite often that the people just let go. Yawning is another one. So when a dog yawns, it's not like us and we want that extra oxygen. It's actually, it's being stressed. It's conflict. Okay. Panting is something we all know, but if it's a cool day and your dog's panting because these kids are running around and and causing it some stress, then we should have a look at what we do with the dog. A wet dog shake is quite often one that's just missed by people. And a wet dog shake means that if there's an interaction with a dog, a person, a child, and the dog then afterwards shakes like it just got out of the water, but it doesn't have to be its whole body. Sometimes it can just be its head. That is it shaking off adrenaline. And that means that that interaction that just happened, it wasn't really comfortable with. And for us, we might have had a close call in a car when we're driving a car. Somebody might have, something might have happened and we had a close call, and we might just shake it off. That's the same as what they do. And so if that happened too, we need to, once again, say whatever interaction just happened just before, we need to wind it back a little bit. Pupil dilation. So, if you can see its eyes get really, really black because its pupils grow really, really big. There are a few of the things that we need to keep an eye on and have a look at. And some of the things that we need to focus on, the behaviors that can start to creep in when people are expecting a baby, is that they will try and hug their partner and their dog will come in between. Right? That's something that needs to be sorted out, because that creates an environment where the dog is perceiving one of you as valuable and wants that rather than the other person wants it. And it's just a thing called positional good, but that is something that you should be, looking at. Does your dog, whine, scratch at the door when it's left alone? So, there's some of the things that we need to look at. And in the videos that I mentioned earlier on, if you have a look at videos on the internet of, those dog bites, and it doesn't necessarily have to be to children, you'll see that the dog has displayed some of those behaviors before biting. And one of the things is that, you'll see a dog lick its lips. You'll see a dog close its mouth. Closing its mouth means that it's most likely going to bite now. And it's like us taking a breath before we go underwater. So you might have a dog and you might approach a dog that's panting and you'll see it close its mouth, lick its lips, then it's ready to go. And so it might look like this. Now it's gone. It's ready to go, right? And people will approach that dog because it's no longer making this. It might not be barking. It might not be, it's just standing there waiting. But its communication has happened all the time before that, when it was lip licking, when it was moving away, when it was pupil dilation, when it was yawning, when it was stretching, when it did the wet dog shake off. All of those things could have happened, and all of those were ignored. And sometimes a lot of people are like, my dog's not listening to me, but we need to actually ask them, are they listening to their dog? And we have to listen to our dogs with our eyes, because that's their primary form of communication to us, is their body language. So we have to actually open up and listen with our eyes.
So Ernie, something simple that people can do if they notice these things that you've pointed out is what's your recommendation? Because if we pick up on the signs, what's the best thing for us to do? Yeah,
definitely seek professional help and seek help that is going to use a positive form of interaction with the dog. It's important that if you're worried at any point, refer to a professional for help. It's also important that you minimize the interaction straight away, or you separate the dog. If you're worried at that instant, then separate the dog.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, we love babies and we love pets, and we don't want families to stress about bringing home the baby if they do own pets. So this is really about empowering them with the knowledge to ensure that both baby and pet are both happy and safe. So what are the top 3 things families can do to help their pets and family prepare for the new baby coming home?
Cool. So I'm going to extend it out to 5.
Oh yeah, you can have 5.
And I'm going to call it, and I'm going to have an acronym of SAFER. Okay, and these are the top 5 things that you need to look at to keep you, your family, and your dog safe. All right, and the first one is S, which is supervise or separate. It's a key point. And what that means is that if you can't supervise, and when I say supervise, I mean that means that you get to the child before the dog does. Remembering that they move 3 to 1 to us. They move 3 meters and we've moved 1. If you can't actively supervise, so you have to be able to immediately intervene, then separate. And that means if you're in the lounge room and the baby's on the floor and the dog's around with you and you're there and you're supervising because the baby's right in front of you, and the doorbell goes, that you have an action plan of what happens. The baby comes with you. Yeah, don't leave the baby there. We need to actually have plans for those things to happen. If your phone goes off and you want to go and get your phone, have an action plan. That supervise and separate is the key. Next is the A, and that means alone. Remember times to leave your dog alone, and that is eating, sleeping, if it's sick, if it's got puppies, if it's on its bed or under things like its table or in its kennel. So remember the times that you need to leave it alone. And then F is focus on the dog's behavior. Focus on those stress and calming signals that we looked at before. The lip licking, yawning, wet dog shakes, move away. They're all things, and the other things that we mentioned earlier on, they're all things that the dog is communicating to you. It's uncomfortable and it wants your help. And if you don't intervene, then it's going to do something to intervene itself. E is for early. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Make that early preparation the key. Really get in there nice and early. As soon as you know you're trying, then get in there and make that happen. And R is refer to a professional early. At any signs of challenges for your dog. That means if it comes in between you when you're trying to hug your partner, if it's going off at the baby crying sounds, all those things, start making it happen early.
Excellent. Good stuff, Ernie. SAFER, I like it. The acronym, the 5 points. So where do we go for more info on this, Rob?
Well, the easiest place to go is to our website, which is www.wearefamily.vic.gov.au, Victorian-based program. The other places that you can access us are through our maternal child health centre, and we're about 500 different maternal child health centres you can access us, and also in our maternity hospitals. So often you'll be able to access our materials while you're booking in, or perhaps while you're in the hospital. So there's plenty of opportunities to get it through those. It's also available not only in Victoria, but in the New South Wales hospitals next year as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rob. And Ernie, that was absolutely amazing as well. Brand new website, www.wearefamily.vic.gov.au. I've checked it out today. You should all as well. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Rob.
Welcome.
Take care.